in being a pilot? Okay, quite a few of you. That's really exciting. How many of you are private pilots right now? You already have your private pilot certificate. Okay. How many of you are instrument rated? Have an instrument rating? Okay, that's super cool. Sweet. And then somebody who's a CFI in here. If you're a CFI, who's a CFI? You're a CFI, that's super cool. Hey, air high five. Shout out. CFI is a lot of work, so that's really impressive. That's definitely an achievement. How many of you are working on a certificate or rating right now? Okay, on the count of 3, I want you to tell me what rating or certificate you're working on. Okay, ready? 1, 2.
Instrument.
Okay, I heard some instrument, I heard some private pilot, I heard some different things. Okay, very interesting. Well, as you already know, my name's Christian. 18 months ago, I had 0 time. I did not know how to fly an airplane. I had 0 time to plane. And now I have 500 hours. Well, I'm scheduled to have 500 hours this week. I think I have like 492 hours or something like that. This week I'm supposed to hit 500, which will be a third of my way to my ATP certificate, which is 1,500 hours. That wonderful, glorious, majestic certificate we all work so hard for. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience, and then of course, if you have any questions, I would love to answer any of your questions that you have. And yeah, hopefully we'll have a good time, and hopefully you learn something. That would be my biggest hope, is that somebody learns something, at least a little bit. So a little bit about me. So I'm a commercial pilot right now. I am rated in a single engine and a multi-engine, and I'm also instrument rated. I'm also a flight instructor as well. If you don't know, your commercial certificate is separate from your flight instructor certificate. They're 2 different pieces of plastic. So I have both of them. I have my commercial one, and then I have my flight instructor one. And on my flight instructor one, I also have ratings. And those are going to be my multi-engine and single engine and instrument ratings, basically meaning I can instruct in single engine airplanes and multi-engine airplanes. I can also instruct in instrument conditions and give instrument training. I am a EAA national and obviously Chapter 34 member. I'm also a Young Eagles pilot. I've been able to help out with that before, and that's been a lot of fun. Also an NGPA national and local chapter member as well. I am a flight instructor for Airline Transport Professional Flight School, or as you may know, ATP Flight School. That's where I work currently. And I'm also an Envoy Airlines cadet. And I'm scheduled to hit 500 hours this week. You're like, okay, what in the world? That's a whole lot going on. Well, we're going to break it down and hopefully make it a little bit more simple to understand. So the first question is, how in the world did I even get here? So I kind of have a breakdown here of a little bit of the things that I feel like I needed to get to where I am today. So the biggest thing you can see here is consistency. It doesn't matter where you're at in your journey. If you're showing up every day and being consistent to get to where you're wanting to be, one day you'll be able to get there. Just little by little, just keep going, don't give up. When you hit roadblocks or have obstacles, keep being consistent, keep showing up, keep studying, keep working for that next thing. The next biggest thing that I would consider that I really needed is I need support from others. This is not something that is easily done alone. I have my dad who's here in the front to support me. Michael has been a huge support to me. Chris has been a huge support to me. Thank you guys so much for all of your love and support. I literally could not have done it without you. My mom, I have friends. It's definitely something where you have those people rally around you and kind of support you to hit your dreams and goals. And that goes a long ways for being able to just do it on your own. So I definitely recommend a support group that you can count on. Willpower is another thing that you really need. You can call this determination if you like to. Drive is another great word, but you're going to need some real mucho gusto, like you're going to need some guts and drive that you want to get here, and you're going to keep going, and no matter what happens, like this is the goal, and I'm going to keep working towards it. Because the journey through aviation, as any of you with any experience know, is a lot like this. There's a lot of up and downs, and there's a lot of going around, and so you have to be consistent and have that willpower, like, I'm gonna do this. And then, well, you need some money. So that's also on there as well. But we'll talk about that as well. So Chris already told you a little bit about me. I worked at Apple, and I was looking for something to do with my life. And I was 27 at the time. Actually, no, I was 26 at the time. I'm 28 now, so this was just about 2 years ago. And I was like, what am I going to do with my life? And I landed on travel. And I was like, man, I love traveling. How many here loves traveling? Go to new places, see new places. It's a lot of fun. And so, man, I was thinking, what could I do that allows me to travel more? And the most logical answer for me, I was thinking really small, right? I was like, not thinking like, you know, they'll ask you like when you're a little kid, maybe somebody asks you, if you could do anything if anything you wanted when you grew up, what would you do? And like, the sky's the limit, right? Because you're a kid, you don't have these boxes that you place over your life. But now I'm 26 and I put myself in a box. And so I was like, well, I want to be a flight attendant. Because that was just the thing that made sense to me. I was like, that makes sense. Like, I can do that. That's feasible, right? So I applied to American Airlines about 2 years ago. In December of 2021, I applied to American Airlines as a flight attendant. And I have to be honest with you, I don't for sure know why I was not selected as a tentative candidate, but I do know, I'm pretty sure it was because I underdressed. I wore like, just like some slacks and like a sweater and a jacket over it. I looked nice, but they were really looking for you to like look like a flight attendant already. So like people were coming into the interview already with their uniforms, and so I'm pretty sure that's why that I did not get the job. But I wanted to travel, so after I didn't get the job, I was kind of discouraged, and I was like, well, I could try again. I was like, I could just try again. Now I know, right? So learn from your mistakes and give it another go. And then I don't know what came over me, but I just kind of had this pause. I was like, well, wait a minute. What if I became a pilot? I'll have the same schedule, make 6 to 8 times as much, far better quality of life. What does it take to be able to do that? I had no idea. I didn't know what flight school was. I didn't know what a yoke was for the most part. I didn't know anything. I was like, I don't know. I didn't know what trim was. I knew nothing. But I just had this idea, like maybe I could do that. Like, what does it take? So I started looking into things, and I started asking questions. I started checking. I started telling my parents, like, hey, what do you guys know about flight school? And then my dad was a pilot this whole entire time. I didn't even know if I really realized that until I started down this journey, and then I realized he's actually a private pilot with like 120 hours or so of time. Yeah, so that was a resource right away. And then of course, the story of how my mom met Julie, Chris's wife, is actually bizarre. And that's kind of a whole nother story. But my mom went to Julie and was like, hey, I know Chris is a pilot for American Airlines. He's a captain. Christian is interested in going down this role. Do you think Chris would be interested in talking to him? And like Chris said, Chris was just phenomenal. I think it was probably not very long, maybe like a couple of days. Chris had called me and was like, come fly, like come meet with us, and we're gonna talk about it. And then he took me up in his Grumman and gave me a discovery flight. And we did my first stall for the first time. I was like, I don't even know what the hell I was doing. I don't know what flaps are. He's like, press this switch for like 5 seconds. So I was like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. I didn't know what was going on, but I was having a great time. And so I started kind of getting my feet wet, and I started learning. And so I'm going to share with you a little bit about flight schools. This is something that I learned before I made the decision to go to ATP. You'll kind of figure this out at some point if you've done any kind of flight training. You basically have kind of 2 extremes, and then you kind of have everything in the middle. So you've got this type of self-paced program, right? So this would be the type of thing where it's like you work a job Monday through Friday. So on the evenings or on the weekends, you'll go and you'll do your flight training. This is going to be generally less expensive because you're working while you're doing it. At least up front, it's less expensive. You can pay as you go. Typically, this method is going to take longer. I have a phenomenal friend who's in her 30s who has been working on getting her ATP rating probably for 10 or 12 years. Like, it takes a lot of time to do things this way. But you can go at your own pace. You can still have your job if that's an option. Or if that's like not an option to not have a job. You're like, I can't get a loan. I need to have some. This is an option, and there are flight schools that will support students in this, and it's a successful route. I've seen many people go through this route and be successful. And then you have the other kind of side of the extreme, which is the accelerated program.
And this is going to be something that flight schools will offer where it's a full-time commitment. This is going to be more cost up front, but the savings are in the long run, which I'll kind of explain to you in a moment what Chris told me. Can be accomplished very quickly, but it is a lot of work, very challenging, because this is like you're at the training center every single day, you're working hard, you're putting in the studies. It's a lot of work. So let me tell you what happened where I finally decided to go to ATP, because I was playing with some different flight schools. I was like, oh, maybe Aviator Air, or maybe I could go here. I didn't really know what to do. And Chris called me on the phone one day. Actually, I think I might have called Chris, but anyway, I remember Chris left me a voicemail, and I was driving home from my Apple store, and he was like, Christian, he was like, you have no idea how much money I make every month. He was like, every single month that you go by, that you wait to make this decision, you're throwing out 30, 40, 50, 60 grand every single month. Because that's how much that you can make once you get to the airlines, once you have seniority. And he really put the perspective for me about how much is truly out there to be made when you make that decision to like get into it. And that's why I say for the accelerator program, it's more cost up front, but in the long run, like I'm probably going to be a commercial, like an airline pilot within the next additional 18 months. And so I can't imagine if I had taken my time and gone through at a slower rate, like I would not be where I am today. So it is a great benefit to be able to do an accelerator program like what ATP offers. Because, like to Chris's point, when you get there, you can, the sooner you can get there, the sooner that you can start working. And if you didn't already, entry-level positions at almost any regional airline for a first officer, like a co-pilot, is 6 figures, like starting out. That's kind of where we're at in the market. So it is very much so like, let's go, let's get this done. So it's very exciting, but it is a lot of work. So after I got this voice message from Chris, at that point I was like, all right, I'm doing this. And so I contacted ATP and I started working with them to get enrolled into the program. There were some things I had to do to qualify, such as get a first class medical. That's like one of the first things you need to do if you're going to flight train, because there's no point in flight training if you can't get a first class medical. Because you have to have a first class medical in order to operate as an airline transport pilot. You cannot fly with a second class or third class medical, so you have to make sure you qualify for that, or else everything else is a waste. So once you have that first class medical, then cool, now you know that you're healthy, you're ready to go, like you can actually do this. So then it's a lot easier to just maintain that health and to take care of yourself. I also had to work with ATP to get qualified for a loan, which can be tricky as well, especially in this day and age. I would definitely recommend, if you can, having a co-signer, because that can help you get lower interest rates. And if you do go the loan route, I also recommend, if you can, fixed rates as opposed to variable rates, because a lot of times they'll be like, oh, it's variable rate, and it's really attractive, right? But guess what? After you've been enrolled for about a year or so, that interest rate, they start to go up because it's variable. So just bear that in mind if you choose that option. Yeah, and then I started at ATP and I started working. I digress. So AirVenture happened in July of 2022. At this point, I had already got my first class medical, and I already had a class start date with ATP in August. And Chris, another amazing thing that he did with me is he took me in his Grumman and allowed me to fly. I logged almost 16 hours of flight time on this trip. I got incredible experience flying straight and level. We also did some simulated instrument, wearing goggles. I got a little bit of that under my belt. And this was an incredible asset to me, because coming into ATP, I had already about 16, 17 hours of flight time. So that was already just like, I already kind of had a step up in the game, I guess, if you will. So Chris, I really appreciate you teaching that. You can't imagine how helpful that was and how much it motivated me to really work hard and get going. And you also let me fly your plane. That's a big deal when somebody lets you fly their plane, you know? It's like their baby, so I really appreciate you doing that. And I had a great time. It was about a week of camping. It was crazy. The weather was nuts. It was raining. Michael almost had to come save me because I was like, what is happening? They call it slosh posh, I found out. That's a thing. Very interesting. But anyways, yeah, I can't tell you how important it is to have mentors. Mentors can be a deal breaker, but it's not enough to just have a mentor. You have to actually listen to your mentor. You have to actually take actionable items to do the things that they're telling you to do. Chris could have stood there all day and like, okay, like you did blah 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 blah, this. But if I hadn't taken the incentive to actually action on those words, then where could it have gotten us? You know what I mean? But don't disregard the importance of a mentor, someone to help you and point you in the right direction when you have issues, someone you can call to ask questions. So I started ATP in August. Private pilot training, in my opinion, is the hardest part of training because this is the time where you are learning the most. You are going from what is a throttle, what is trim, what are differential ailerons, what is Bernoulli's principle, what is lift. You're like, what is all this stuff? And it is so much information to learn, and you are going from literally 0 to 100. Like you don't know anything, and now all of a sudden you're learning, and you actually know how to fly an airplane and to operate as the pilot in command of an aircraft. That is a huge jump. So first of all, if you are a private pilot in the room right now, go ahead and give yourself a pat on the back. Good job, because that is no simple accomplishment. It took me about 3 months. I did almost quit. At one point during my training, I was struggling with landings, and I could not figure out how to ace the round out and the flare. I couldn't get this right side picture. It was really frustrating. I was really nervous, and I struggled in that area for a little while, and I started getting discouraged. But thankfully, I had my support group who continued to support me and to tell me, like, no, like, you're going to do this, like, figure this out. And I did figure it out, because here I am, and I do know how to land the plane now, okay, so everybody can rest at ease. This was a while ago. It took me about 3 months to get my private pilot certificate, even in the accelerator program, ATP, and not even ATP, most flight schools, this includes Coast, American Flyers, ATP, a lot of these fast track airlines will tell you, 7 months, 0 time to see, 9 months. It took me 11 months, okay? You've got weather, you've got nationwide examiner shortages, you've got flight instructor availability. You also will have, at some point, you're going to need some time off. You know, you're going to have to take a break. You might be sick. So there are delays that you have to consider. These fancy 7, 8, 9 month programs, they sound really great on paper, but they are oftentimes a little bit longer. So if you do select to do one of those options, aim for 7 months. Like, by all means, like, bam, like, try to get it done. But make sure you're budgeting and, like, you know, have a backup plan in case things take a little bit longer, because they might. My instrument rating was a lot of fun, but it does feel like starting over. That was really discouraging for me. I remember it was just kind of a culture shock to me because, you know, you finish your private pilot check ride, you got this new fancy piece of paper, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And the next thing you know, you got an instrument approach plate in front of you, and you're like, what is this? Like, I thought I knew everything. I was a private pilot. Well, you don't know everything, and so then it's kind of like starting over. And a lot of times when you start a new certificate, it can feel that way a little bit. For those of you who are maybe instrument or commercial pilot, guess what? When you have to start flying at the right seat, that is really weird. So it's really strange. Different sight picture. Again, kind of like starting over a little bit. So just kind of be prepared. Every single time you move a new phase, there's something new to learn, a new challenge to overcome. But it's a lot of fun. That instrument rating also took me about 3 months. It was over the course of the holidays and Christmas and stuff like that. So of course there's inevitable delays as far as that's concerned. And then I got to commercial pilot. And right at the end of my commercial pilot phase, I hit this thing called burnout. Who has ever been burned out before? Okay, we love the honesty in the room. Be careful about burnout. I know that flying, you know, you want to fly, and it is very, you know, when you get into the accelerator program, it is just kind of like this culture mindset where it's just like, if you're not in the plane, like you're wasting time. That is not true. Rest is not wasted time. Study time is not wasted time. Just because you're not flying and not building flight hours does not mean that time is wasted. There's a million other things you can do. And I got very burned out because I was of this mindset of like, I'm not flying, like I feel like I'm stuck, I can't get through this, and I started getting really tired and really burned out. And I'm very fortunate. I had a really good flight instructor who was able to help me kind of get through this hoop. And I also had a really good examiner who gave me my commercial pilot check ride, and I was able to pass successfully my first attempt, which was definitely grace because I was very tired. And guess what? Awaited me right around the corner, CFI. So as soon as I finished commercial pilot, I started CFI school. And I am so grateful for my CFI ground instructor that I had at ATP. So basically the way ATP does it is once you finish commercial instrument and private, private instrument and commercial, you go into your flight instructor training, and your flight instructor training is divided into 2 separate periods of 2 weeks. And the first 2 weeks is just ground instruction. So you basically just study, you learn all the different lesson plans, all the things you have to know. You're looking at the test standards and stuff of that nature. And then after that 2 weeks is concluded, you get your ground log and everything from the instructor, and then you start actually flying and acclimating to the right seat. And you have to basically do all these maneuvers you just learned how to do in private and private and commercial, and you have to learn how to do those in the right seat. And now learn how to land in the right seat and how your sight picture is different. For people who are right eye dominant, this can be incredibly difficult because the right eye makes you think that you are further right of center line than you actually are. So it's helpful to close your right eye when you can to kind of help your left eye take over, and that can help your sight picture and stuff like that. But at any rate, I am right eye dominant heavily, and so I did struggle a bit with my sight picture. But this ground instructor was very impactful in my life, and he really kind of refreshed my love for aviation. And the 2 weeks of just not flying and just like studying and reading and going over the regulations and stuff like that, he really helped kind of breathe a new life in it and really made it interesting. And he painted it in a light that was like made me want to study. And so it really just kind of revived me, and I got excited about aviation again, and it gave me that next wind to help finish the last part of my program, which can be very, very fast-paced. Because at this point, once you got your private instrument commercial, at this point, most of it is just like a few hours of training and then another check ride. It's pretty bam, 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 bam at this point. It kind of is a little bit downhill. I do want to take a pause and just to kind of explain, if anybody doesn't know what a practical test is, when I say a practical test, I'm talking about a check ride. Some people are a little bit confused as to what a check ride looks like. For those of you who have already taken check rides, who has not ever taken a check ride before? Okay, cool. A few of you. So the way that a practical test works is it is broken into 3 portions. You have a written exam, and you have an oral exam, and then you have the flight exam. Okay, the written exam is and can be done a lot earlier than the oral and the flight portion. So it is a very wise decision and a good decision when you have a practical test on the horizon, go ahead and get your written exam done. So every test, for the most part, it's not every test, but a lot of them do have a written exam. Go ahead and get that taken care of. That will make it so that you can kind of focus on your oral exam and your actual flight exam, which is 2 halves of a check ride. A check ride will consist of an oral portion and a flight portion. And the guide for your check ride is on FAA.gov. I have it written right here. FAA.gov is going to have the resources. They're going to be called something like the ACS, which is the Airman Certification Standards, or the PTS, which is the Practical Test Standards. These documents can be downloaded off of FAA.gov for free at no cost, and you can actually see exactly what you are going to be tested on. So I highly recommend, if you have a check ride, if you've taken a check ride, you almost certainly use an ACS or a PTS, because it basically tells you what's on the test. And so it's a great place to start to just kind of see, okay, what do I need to be tested on? And then you can go and study these things and make sure that you know them to a satisfactory level. If you're interested, my best tips for a check ride. Number 1, control the flow. Sometimes people get into a check ride and they're like, okay, tell me about drag. It's like, okay, well, there's 2 different types of drag. One is parasitic drag, one is induced drag, the parasitic drag, and then they just start spewing all this information. Okay? If the examiner asks you a question, we say this a lot at ATP. If they ask you what the time is, tell them what the time is. Don't build the watch. So control the flow of information. Try to speak a little bit slower and be cognitive and literate your words as best you can so that you make less mistakes. The more words you say in a check ride, the more opportunity for you to say something wrong. So So try to slow down. For me personally, if I get nervous, I start talking really fast, and then I start tripping over my words, and I say things I don't mean to. So it's important, just like, if you're that type of person, have that self-awareness, slow down, and just kind of take your time through the oral exam. Another huge thing is clarify. Oh my gosh, so many amazing pilots who totally are like ready to take their check ride. The examiner tells them to do something, they don't understand how to do it, they don't like, there's not that clarification, like they're not sure what the examiner wants them to do, and then it ultimately ends up in an unsatisfactory check ride result because there was just a miscommunication. What a shame. So I had to pay a recheck fee, all because the student didn't take a moment to ask the examiner, you said a short field, right? Okay, cool, short field takeoff, roger that. Oh, am I clear to this fix for an instrument approach or something like that? Yes, you're clear to this fix. Okay, cool, now I know I need to hold here, or now I know I have clearance to descend, or whatever the case may be. So make sure that you're clarifying with your examiner, very important. And last but not least, have confidence. Humble confidence, but confidence. If you have an endorsement from your instructor, that basically means that someone who is a certified flight instructor who has a lot of authority has endorsed you, put their name on you, and they believe that you are worthy of being able to hold and operate with these privileges. So take that into check ride and be confident that you basically have already earned your endorsement and completed your training. And a good examiner is an examiner who wants to give you your endorsement, like your certificate or rating, whatever it is you came to get. They want to give that to you. So just be confident. Don't act like you know everything. That's not what I'm talking about. Please be humble. Examiners love to be able to also help you learn through the check ride. So make sure that there is opportunity for do that. If an examiner comes in and feels like you're not willing to learn anything, then they're going to look for a reason to give you an unsatisfactory evaluation. So just make sure that you are carrying yourself with humility, but be confident in the training that you've received and in the endorsement your flight instructor gave you. Shepherd Air, if you don't know where to start to study for an exam, Shepherd Air is amazing, and Shepherd Air does not have a private pilot curriculum. However, they do have some amazing free resources to get you started in training for your PAR, the private airplane written. So I would definitely recommend, regardless of what written exam you're taking, no matter what it is, Shepherd Air is my top 10. They are very good, proven to be able to know what they're doing. So I took all of my written exams using their study prep material, and I did very well. So I really appreciate everything they do. So after I finished my CFI took me about, I started in April 14th, and so I finished about June, so about a month and a half. So it was pretty fast. Beginning of June was when I finished. After I finished my CFI, I started training in a Seminole. I started doing multi-engine training, which was so much fun to me, and this was really exciting, and just continued to increase my love and my burning passion for aviation. But it was very, very fast. So my multi-engine training, when I took my check ride in the Seminole, I had only trained in the Seminole for 8 hours. That is it. The rest of it was ground training or simulator training, and I think I had maybe 2 or 4 hours of simulator training. I think I was supposed to have more, but I didn't. And so I took my check ride in the Seminole after only flying in that Seminole for 8 hours. Also, I had just spent a couple of weeks in the right seat, and when I took my multi-engine check ride, I was back in the left seat. So it's definitely very challenging, so you have to be proactive. Chair flying is something that is very, very efficient to make sure you're practicing your flows down and you're running your checklists, make sure that you're proficient in those. And it's not a joke, it is really helpful getting in the sim or something like that, being enrolled in a school that has simulators available to students to just get in and train is also something I highly recommend, because there's a huge responsibility on you, the student, to stay proficient with a very limited amount of hours that you're going to be training. After that, I took my multi-engine instructor check ride as well as my instrument instructor check ride, also in the Seminole, and I had probably about 20 hours of training additionally, so I was no, not even that. I had 25 hours total time, 23 hours total time. Yeah, I think that I took my check ride in the multi-engine with about 8 hours of total time in the Seminole, and then I took these last 2 check rides with around 23 or 25 hours total time in the Seminole. So still really fast. And I took my multi-engine check ride at the end of June. Within a month, I was taking these last 2 check rides. So it was 3 check rides within the span of 30 days. So there's definitely a lot of work, a lot going on. So it's just a lot of flying, just a lot of busyness. And then I completed the program on August 2nd. And so let's talk about that for a second. So once you finish your program, it's kind of like, okay, what's next? It's kind of like a fresh page. You turn the page, and there's no writing, and it's up to you on which way you go. A lot of instructors go in a flight school that has opportunity for the instructors to get hired. At the point when I graduated, ATP was not really hiring a lot of flight instructors because they were pretty overstaffed. There was only one location that was hiring at this point in DFW, and they have like 3 or 4. And so I was kind of like, okay, well, I don't know what to do. So I applied for American Flyers. I went to go work at American Flyers, flight school in Addison, and I was really, really impressed. There are a lot of flight schools out there, like, please, just so you know, like when you go to a flight school, you finish your training, you finish, and you're a certified flight instructor, you're a commercial pilot, whatever it is, the world is truly your oyster. Like there is opportunities out there to be had. Pipeline work, photography, or surveillance is also something very convenient for low-time pilots to be able to do. A lot of flight schools are hiring flight instructors, so there is a lot of opportunity. A lot of people they kind of go right back into their flight school. I was really grateful that I decided not to instruct at ATP. I went to American Flyers, and I ended up not liking and staying with American Flyers for very long just because they didn't have a whole lot of hours that they were offering me. That was really my only qualm. Like I loved the team, like they had great curriculum, they taught things differently than ATP, and I loved learning from that. You know, you may have heard it said before, there's multiple ways to skin a cat. So that was very, it was great for me to be able to learn that. I probably would have stayed longer had they had more opportunity for me to fly more, but the position that they put me in and kind of the direction that they had me go made it so that I was able to fly a lot. And so I ended up leaving and going back to ATP. And the only location that was hiring was the Addison location. And so beggars can't be choosers, so I went to Addison. And I absolutely am so happy that I made that decision. I love training out of the Addison, or instructing out of the Addison airspace. It is a very challenging airspace, very busy, a lot of jet traffic, but it demands that the student really rise to like another level of professionalism and pilotmanship that, you know, if you're training in an airport that's really quiet and just like really, you know, it's not very busy, you might not be able to get that experience. So they're continuously and constantly on with like DFW approach, being vectored and having to be told to speed up or slow down for traffic in front of them or behind them, and given complicated vectors and stuff like that. So it really makes them like really proficient and good. And so I really enjoy that airspace. But it is challenging, but there's going to be challenges anywhere you go. So I guess pick and struggle, so to speak. But anyways, I got hired at ATP on the 25th of September, and I've been a flight instructor there ever since. And this brings me to the last part of my journey, which is getting hired at Envoy. So many regional airlines are looking for candidates to be able to start getting in their pipeline. They love having those people that are ready to go as soon as they are ready to fulfill their hours, and they're just like pumping them through. As soon as this person has their hours, okay, great, you're a first officer. The hiring process at regional airlines, or any airline in general, is incredibly expensive and incredibly time consuming. So it is important for airlines, if they want to continue to have pilots, when pilots are continuously moving and changing positions and getting promoted and going to captains or flowing, there's constant cycle and movement of the pilots at airlines and stuff, so they have a very, it's very beneficial to the airline to have a pipeline set up for those student or whatever flight instructors to be able to flow through. Envoy is probably one of the best ones right now, in my opinion. They have phenomenal benefits for the people that basically become cadets. The way that it works is you would interview with Envoy, and this is for someone who is like a flight instructor. This would be something that would be available to a student, but for a flight instructor that's instructing, you actually basically become an employee of Envoy. And many of the other regionals will do something like this as well. They will hire you, and then at that point, you will begin receiving benefits. So you can get health benefits, you can get 401k matching, you can get, like for me, I have vacation time accrual. I can't take vacation because I'm still in contract at ATP technically, but my vacation time for Envoy is currently building So when I start working at Envoy, I'm already going to have a couple weeks of vacation waiting for me. So that's really convenient. I also get travel perks and benefits. I just flew in this morning from LaGuardia at no cost because Envoy takes very good care of their employees. It's phenomenal. So definitely really exciting. Very exciting things happening in aviation. But they hired me as an Envoy cadet at the end of December. I interviewed with them. It was a pretty straightforward interview. It was interesting to me because I applied for the very first time when I was a private pilot. I applied again when I was a commercial pilot. And then I applied again when I was a flight instructor. And when I became a flight instructor, man, it was just like, immediately they reached out to me and they were like, hey, we would like for an interview, can you send us this documentation? I think that when you kind of get a little bit of traction in your career, I think that it definitely helps. When you're working with regional airlines, they like to see you have 300, 400, 500 hours. It makes it a lot easier to get in versus being a new student. That was just kind of my perspective. I also applied to the Frontier cadet position when I was not even a private pilot at that point. I probably had like maybe 30 hours. Never even heard back from them. But there is a lot of opportunities out there in aviation. It's a very exciting time to get involved. And my greatest recommendation, if you don't remember anything I said tonight, keep learning. Keep learning. Every single day, keep learning. If you learn something every single day, 365 days from now, you're going to know 365 things that you didn't know. So keep learning, keep studying, keep working, stay consistent, and yeah, that's what I have for you guys. Do you have any questions? Thank you so much for listening to me talk and for hearing my story. I hope that it helped you in some regard. But at any rate, who has a question? Yes, sir.
So when you did your instrument rating, right, what were some of the challenges that you faced at the pace that they had you going?
Ooh, that's a great question.
So this is going to be something that's a challenge associated with specifically accelerated programs. It is very, very fast paced. So I mean, there was not really a whole lot of time to learn like the procedures. Instrument is 90% procedural knowledge. Like you need to know, I need to fly to this fix, I need to intercept the glide slope here, I need to have these certain things in my vision to be able to descend down to the runway. It is very procedural. So the other 10% is probably like precision of knowing how to control the aircraft. For example, if I pitch the aircraft down, I need to know that, okay, I also need to simultaneously reduce some power, otherwise you're just going to start speeding up towards the ground. So it's kind of things like that where you have to be very precise with the control of the aircraft. As far as challenges that I faced, I think that my procedural knowledge when I was going through instrument was very poor. Like I just did not, like what is a non-precision approach? Like what is it for? Like what does it do? You know what I mean? Like the basic things that are kind of like set the foundation, I don't feel like I really knew those well enough. Like what is a precision approach? What makes it a precision approach? Why is it a precision approach? If you're struggling in instrument, the best thing I'd probably say to do, especially if you're in a fast-paced program, is do not be afraid or ashamed to ask your instructor or to search basic questions. Like just go back to the basics. Like what does it mean? What is the purpose of this? What is this made up of? You know, what is an ILS? What are the things, what like a glide slope shoots out of my plane, and then it's like, you know what I mean? So go and study those things. And I felt when I was going through my program, I felt like it was almost like once I got to a certain point, if I asked a question that I should have already known, it was like I would get judged, or like my instructor would be really disappointed in me. And that's just immaturity on the instructor's part. There's no questions to dumb question. If you don't know something, that's not your fault. You know what I mean? You've got to ask those questions. So don't be ashamed to ask those questions. But accelerated training in instrument is very difficult because it is a lot of work to like study the procedures. Have you ever heard of Bolt Method? It's a YouTube channel. I would highly recommend their videos. They do a great job of answering student questions and just kind of explaining things that they do. From the instrument perspective, they have really good supplemental instrument training and stuff that you can look at. But that's kind of my perspective as far as that is concerned. Did that answer the question?
Josh.
Did I answer the question for the most part? Yeah. Cool. What other questions do you guys have? Yes, sir.
So the Envoy programs and those regional airline programs, are they only for the young kids?
Envoy programs and the regional programs, are those only for the young kids? By young kids, are you talking about like 0 to 100 hours?
I'm talking about age.
Age, great question. So Envoy will not hire you if you are younger than 21 years old. So they are not for anyone that is younger than 21. So if you're starting flight training and you're 19, great job, fantastic. Keep working at it, okay? And also it kind of takes the pressure off of you because you don't have to be so concerned about your timeline. You know, when I went through the program, I was 27, so all I could think about was like, go fast, go fast, go fast, go fast. But if you're 18 or 19, you've got time because you can't even be an airline transport pilot until you're 21. So, yes, does that answer the question?
Yeah, what about the other side? How old can you be?
How old can you be? So on the other side of things, you can be an airline transport pilot up until 65 years old. 65 years old is where the airlines require that you retire. I have a student right now who is 40 years old. I also know of a student at ATP who is in their 50s as well. I would say if you are, gosh, Chris, what would you say? What would you say would be the cutoff that you might recommend somebody not pursue, like being a pilot per se, like airline transport pilot?
Starting like, you mean to start?
Like to start.
I mean, if you're 50, you're going to be okay, probably.
Yeah.
If you get much above 50, you're going to, you know, it's where the lines of break even kind of come. You're going to spend a lot of time and effort.
Yeah.
Maybe 52, but you know, it's the diminishing returns.
That's
I mean, unless you, and some people just want to learn and they want to just, hey, I just want to do it.
Yeah.
You know, they're not going to get hurt, but it's not going to be as lucrative.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Yes, ma'am.
I have a female friend who got hired on. I have a female friend who got hired on with Envoy at 44, I think. And she's captain from American now.
Yeah.
And she's in her 50s, but you know, she was hired by Envoy at 44.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that. Yeah, absolutely. That's phenomenal. And yeah, it just goes to show you how fast the promotions come right now because of the rate of the retirements. Like you can get promoted and flow very quickly. So within 10 years, maybe even 6 years, your friend, she went from a brand new hire at 44 to now she's a captain for American Airlines. That's really impressive. Yeah, and that's just the rate that it's moving right now, so it's a great time to get involved. What other questions do you guys have? Yeah, absolutely. Josh? Nice to meet you.
Okay, so my timeline here, I'm 26, I just turned 26. My timeline is starting to feel like this. I'm starting to feel a little bit smaller. Right now, I'm in a program. It's a pay-as-you-go. It's Part 60, aviator care. And I'm actually, the only reason I went with Part 61 is because I'm actually a bit hesitant to go with 141. I've heard a lot of bad things about Part 141, and one of those things was pace and not being able to keep up and being dropped. I'm still interested in pursuing going 141, but I want to know, and I've done research, but I want to know more of like someone who's already been there, more pros and cons.
Okay.
What advice would you have?
Okay. You said you're Grand Prairie? I looked into going there when I first started. Do you have your instrument rating?
Not yet.
But you have your private pilot certificate. Wow, so you're really like, you're kind of in this threshold where you kind of have this last chance to go either way. Because some of these accelerated programs won't accept students that already have their instrument rating, but they will accept credit private students. So like if you wanted to go somewhere like ATP or Coast, you could totally do that. To your question, like, what are some of the pros and cons of a 141? Well, first of all, a lot of people don't know this, but like Coast Flight and ATP and these fast track programs are still Part 61. They are not Part 141. Part 141 is generally going to be associated with like Embry-Riddle or Letourneau. I believe American Flyers also has a 141. 141 school is basically a school that goes to the FAA and they say, hey, listen, we have really good curriculum. We want you to test this curriculum and look through it and see if it's as good as we think it is. Because if it is, then we're going to send our students to their check rides earlier. And you basically, your qualifications to become a commercial pilot or airline transport pilot are dropped. So you can become an airline transport pilot at 1,200 hours instead of 1,500 because you went through 141 school, which is basically curriculum that is signed off by the FAA. So, ATP does not have curriculum signed off by the FAA. ATP does not like anybody touching their curriculum. They want to teach things the way they want taught, and they want to do things the way they want to do it. So that's fine, right? There's multiple ways to skin a cat. But the students that I have seen not be successful at ATP, I've definitely seen some tough things, but the vast majority, it's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, what were you doing? Like, why are we not here? Like, why would you, like, ATP expects you, and this is just one example, but other schools have similar expectations. They expect you to be at school, like, 9 to 5. Like, you should be studying, you should be working with groups. And if you're at the school, like, regularly, consistently, not even 9 to 5, you could do 9 to 3, you could do maybe, like, 10 to 7, or 10 to 5, or something like that, if you want to build a schedule that, you know, is able to resist traffic. A lot of times you can work with your flight instructor, they'll be scheduled, they'll be flexible with you because they're holding your hand. Like, you're a grown person, so they're like, okay, like, this is not college, you know what I mean? Like, you're learning to fly planes. This has a lot of responsibility associated with it. So you gotta show up and you gotta work hard. And when that doesn't happen, you start to get behind the program. And when you're messing around with other students or getting distracted, like, that all creates problems for you. So if you're like, no, I know I can focus, like, I know that I can work hard, I know I can be diligent, I can show up every day, honestly, you're probably going to thrive. You're probably going to do really well. Because the vast majority of people that are unsuccessful in those programs are people that do not put in the work. That's what I would say. Of course, there are always, you know, I have one particular person, a great pilot, and he failed his certified flight instructor check ride, and then he had to take it again, and he failed it again. And so then he couldn't get an instructor to endorse him. And it's hard to get endorsed for a certified flight instructor check ride because you have to have a flight instructor that has a significant amount of experience to endorse you. They're what's called a 2-year, right? They have to have 2 years of experience and 200 hours of dual given or whatever. So that was really tough. He was a great pilot. He busted twice. And ATP unfortunately had to remove him from the program. But ATP is not looking to do that. Like, flight schools don't benefit from that. Like, they don't like to do that. They will work with you and try to, like, make sure they offer additional training or any kind of other options so that you can stay. But at the end of the day, if you're not putting in the work, you're not showing up to your events prepared, you're not doing what you've been asked to do by the school, then that's when you run into problems. So just do what you're supposed to do. Fair enough. What other questions do you guys have? Okay, well, hey.
Okay, I'm gonna add to some of your stuff because I'm gonna fill in because I was listening.
Okay, cool. Well, come take this mic from me, somebody.
Yeah, okay. I'll come take it.